Well, a good Saturday to you. I'm Fox 26 meteorologist John Dawson. This is our afternoon tropical update, and things have escalated quite quickly as concerns are with Beryl. As yesterday at this time, we were identifying a tropical depression number 2, and within a 24-hour period, we now have a Category 1 hurricane. The 4 p.m. update from the National Hurricane Center has those maximum sustained winds at 75 miles an hour. They will be giving us another update around 10 o'clock on Saturday night, but the track itself remains pretty much consistent. I think this is a little bit, the intensity has increased a bit from the previous forecast, but we're still looking at the basic idea that this system is going to continue to strengthen, get better organized, possibly a Category 2 hurricane by the time we get to Sunday in the afternoon. Maybe even a major hurricane as it gets to the Windward Islands as a Category 3. And then as we move through the Caribbean, the conditions are not quite as favorable for development. So the Hurricane Center is still keeping that system sort of degrading a little bit, or falling apart a little bit, or weakening, I guess would be the best term to put that. So here we are on Tuesday morning early. This is Tuesday in the afternoon. And then as we get into Wednesday, you'll notice we're going from a Cat 3 down to a Cat 2, and that weakening process beginning to happen a little bit overall. So we're going to continue to sort of talk about this track and dive into things just a little bit. I do want to show you sort of some of these steering currents that are helping to kind of keep this system so far to the south. And for us along the Gulf Coast of the United States, we always are concerned by that, because we would rather see a system sort of pop up and get sucked up into the Atlantic than make it all the way into the Gulf of Mexico. And it's just too early to really have confidence in saying exactly where Beryl will go. But things do at this point appear to keep it in the Caribbean, with possibilities of the Gulf of Mexico not heading up into the Atlantic. So a couple high pressure ridges here, high pressure in the upper levels of the atmosphere, helping to kind of steer this system fairly low in latitudes, keeping it to the south. And you'll see that this is going to continue to remain in the Caribbean, and again, even be possibly making it into the Gulf of Mexico. So here is Beryl, and I'll tell you, we're going to be talking a lot about these waves, or this wave that's back behind it in here in a minute, but we're continuing to see Beryl form because it's such favorable conditions. And then there's another tropical wave back here that we're going to continue to talk about that will also be trying to form. So this is our exclusive Fox model that we're going to show you here as we're following pretty much that track that is set by the National Hurricane Center, as we're seeing this system get better organized, get stronger, and then continuing to move just to the south of Jamaica. Our Fox model right now, when you get a little bit further out past that 5-day threshold, where this is all the way into Thursday now, it does keep it a little bit even further to the south than maybe what some of the other models, and particularly the Hurricane Center, has a little bit further to the north right now. Switching gears a little bit real quick, I want to get into Invest 94L. So this is another area that the Hurricane Center is watching. Now that area of low pressure is over the Yucatan Peninsula, still expected to get out here in the Bay of Campeche, and then continuing to stay further to the south and end up into the Gulf of, into the east coast of Mexico. Our Fox model here as well showing that that rain is going to stay well to the south in the Gulf of Mexico, and not really going to move up and impact the United States, but plenty of rainfall expected from Mexico as we're moving forward in what they're expecting. Once we get into the beginning of next week on Monday and Tuesday, then it begins to fall apart just a little bit. So let's get back to kind of that bigger picture of things. This is going to be our outlook that we're talking about. This is that area that I just showed you where the low pressure is over the Yucatan Peninsula, and the Hurricane Center giving this a 50% chance that it might develop into a tropical system. So chances are that at this point, it's kind of the flip in the coin. Will it make it to a depression or a tropical storm right before it makes its landfall into Mexico, or won't it? It doesn't really matter that much as far as the impacts are concerned. The winds will be a little less if it's not tropically organized, but the rainfall is certainly going to be there, and that's what the folks over in Mexico are mainly going to be concerned with as far as what those expectations are and possibilities. Now, I talked about that tropical wave that's further back behind Beryl, closer to the African coast, and here's where that is right here. Again, not that far from the African coast. It is fairly low to the south again in latitudes, and the Hurricane Center giving this a 70% chance of becoming a tropical system. So pretty confident here that this will become a tropical system. And what's a little bit unusual, well, very unusual for this time of the year, but even in a more peak season, it's not common to have multiple hurricanes happening at one time. But this could possibly even become a hurricane. And reminder, this is where Beryl is currently located. So this wave, possibly anywhere in the red shading, could become a tropical system, a 70% chance over the next 7 days. And as I mentioned, this is the current location of where Beryl is. So Beryl is going to continue to progress to the west, and this wave is going to continue to move to the west. And we'll just see how long it takes for that to kind of get a little bit more developed as far as getting into a system. So one more time, when we're talking about Beryl, looking at that 7-day outlook, when we've got Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then the Thursday, I'll call it a 5-day outlook then. Here's where we're going to end up, still keeping this system in the Caribbean and then moving into the Yucatan Peninsula possibly. And you'll note once again, we go from a major hurricane just when we get on the into the Caribbean, past the Windward Islands, staying a major hurricane, skirting just to the south of Jamaica is the current thought on this. If you want to look at the whole cone, though, we could even have impacts up into Cuba, and then we're continuing to move further to the west into the Caribbean, into that Yucatan Peninsula. So Beryl now checked off the list. That next system that we're to form is going to be called Chris. That could be that 94L, Invest 94L, that's over on the Yucatan Peninsula, or it might be that tropical wave that's out closer to Africa, but we're continuing to expect to see these names checking right on off the list. Real quick, I just want to have a little bit of discussion for those of us in the Houston area. This is kind of tropical related. It's that Saharan dust. This dust will also impact some of that development that's happening, but right now we're concerned with this batch of dust that's just entering in the Gulf of Mexico and going to be looking at the coastline here, and we'll see Monday afternoon, sort of the densest of that haze really start to move in, and we're going to notice it as early as Sunday afternoon here in the Houston area. So we end the weekend with this Saharan dust haze, and that's going to be pretty noticeable throughout the day on Monday, and then a little bit even more into Tuesday as well. If you're just sort of checking in and finding our tropical updates, I'm encouraging you to check back here regularly. You might be on YouTube, you might be on fox26houston.com. These two areas are updated every day. You'll note it today's Saturday, even on the weekends. Saturday, Sunday, all the days of the week. We're here a little bit after that 4 o'clock update from the National Hurricane Center, keeping you up to date in an in-depth discussion on what's happening in the tropics. We'll expect to see you again here tomorrow.